Thank you for joining this important panel session on future work and future skills. And I'm delighted to have with me very prominent and prominent personalities who will share with me in terms of the challenges as well as opportunities as we adopt in the new normal, and how we guide the workforce, how we guide the talent in terms of adapting in the new normal. What we are seeing is that in terms of the adoption and the new normal scenario, overall, the word VUCA, volatile, uncertain environment, is a lot more different with COVID. And then it is clearly the uncertainty that everyone has to deal with in today's context. Along with uncertainty, the element of digital artificial intelligence comes into play. And then the success in the new normal requires one to be hands-on and very comfortable in the new normal environment. Similarly, it is very important to be able to adapt to change. One facet of uncertainty or flip side of uncertainty is the ability to adapt to change very fast. So uncertainty is the new norm, and digital and AI is going to define how we achieve success in the new environment. And in order to be successful, it is important to be able to adapt fast and be able to move on with the change. So there are, I think, amongst the skills that the future would require, while we recognize the challenge to move forward, the key skills are centered around the soft aspects. The cognitive skills play a very big role in terms of how we change and how we adapt. In terms of cognitive skills, it's about critical thinking and the ability to think on your feet. In terms of challenges, you might not have a lot of time to evaluate options, but you have to take decisions sooner. And that requires logical reasoning, understanding biases, and seeking relevant information. You might not have all the information at hand to make that decision. Then planning ways of working becomes very, very important. Agile way of working is the new norm again, not to go in a traditional waterfall way of working, but very agile ways, so that you are in one way able to respond to change faster. Then communication is another important element, because while there's a lot of contribution from analytics, digital, AI, in order to be successful, one needs to see how can we bring in supplementary skills through our workforce, through our talent, that can complement the digital platforms, digital technologies. And simply replicating what the digital platforms can do will not give much sustainability. So in that context, communication is a very, very important element, asking the right questions largely. And then the flexibility, mental flexibility, because resilience is a very important aspect. In terms of the other element apart from cognitive, the interpersonal elements are also very important. What we are recognizing, and it is increasingly challenging as people move into a hybrid way of working, there's less time for physical interactions, and it's all virtual. So in that environment, one has to make extra effort to be successful and to deliver outcomes. So team working, and then how you work together in terms of influencing towards that outcome, collaboration becomes really key. Then all this is dependent on self-leadership. It's that self-motivation, self-drive that we need to create both at entrepreneur level as well as self-awareness and self-management. because there's less of telling and giving instructions, but taking the initiative and driving. That is also about risk taking, because the new normal will define success, and you have the opportunity to create success. But that requires taking ownership, setting goals, driving towards those goals. And the last area is digital. Digital is something that you can acquire at a classroom or through education. But cognitive skills, self-leadership, as well as interpersonal skills are something that one need to, in terms of develop as you progress. And there's limited correlationship between interpersonal skills, self-leadership, and education. Education can give you digital skills and all the other aspects, but the education systems that are available today doesn't really focus or help in self-leadership, interpersonal, and cognitive. So those areas require more effort and more work. So my colleagues will talk through in terms of what are the changes that are needed, and as well as the successful case studies from their personal experiences in terms of how to overcome some of these challenges that we have, as well as creating an equitable workplace and equitable environment for the diverse work groups that we have in the workplace and in the country. So with that, I would invite our next speaker to speak at this, share his thoughts. I'll invite Ms. Dagmar Walter, Director for Decent Work Team in South Asia and India at ILO. And I think we are very fortunate to have Dagmar at this forum to share ILO's perspectives, especially in terms of policies in supporting these future skills, and giving us a context in terms of the new emerging requirements, emerging rights in terms of for people with disabilities, LGBTQI community, and how do we adopt. So with that, I would invite Dagmar to share her thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Supul, and a very good morning to the distinguished panel that we have here in this session today, and also to all you members and listeners to these webinars. Well, indeed, I must say that South Asia, as a major supply chain hub and also tourist destination, has been especially hard hit by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Business closures and falling consumer demand and supply chain bottlenecks really have continued to, spread ripple effects. Now, the crisis has exposed, in fact, especially those in the lower tiers of supply chains where micro and small enterprises and often informal workers are concentrated. And many markets now put higher demands on equity and sustainability throughout the supply chain and want to see this implemented as we will build back from this pandemic. Now, some things that can help you in this and guide you is the ILO Multinational Enterprise Declaration. It was put up to date in 2017 and includes, due diligence in alignment with the UN guiding principles on business and human rights, and has specific focus on meaningful consultations with potentially affected groups and other relevant stakeholders, and that also includes workers' organizations. Implementation of the UN guiding principles in business operations and relations, regardless, I would say, of size, of ownership, sector, or country of operation, is really essential for realizing and safeguarding the human, including labor rights, for workers and also businesses throughout South Asia. Now, if you look at the principles, number 12 speaks to the ILO Declaration on Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work. And these encompass 8 ILO core conventions, the international labor standards. And they speak to freedom of association and right to collective bargaining. And I think especially here we want to concentrate on non-discrimination and equal pay for equal work, and also, of course, elimination of forced labor and child labor. Now, this cause is taken forward through the Alliance 8.7, which is promoting the Sustainable Development Goal 8 and Target 7. And in fact, Sri Lanka is a pathfinder country of Alliance 8.7. And looking at it, it will be important for the country, including business, to recover and really look at, the advances that were made, I'm thinking, before the pandemic, and see where have there possibly been any slipbacks due to the impacts of the pandemic, and find ways to progress in the next months and years, and especially recover anything that was lost and then also build back in a constructive way. Now, if we look at an inclusive workplace and business model, this always generates more innovative outputs and is more resilient to future shocks also. Hence, I find it important for the private sector to reach out to people of all gender and sexual identity, people living with disabilities, or any marginalized group really in the society. Inclusive policies will foster more tolerant work environment and lower violence and harassment, which after all is conducive for a more productive business environment. Now, in fact, the ILO works with business in particular in South Asia, and our work shows that there is a strong correlation between better working conditions and higher productivity. Now, there is also the ILO Help Desk for Business, and it provides guidance on how to better align business operations with international labor standards and build good industrial relations. One area that we have seen has gained a lot of importance also in the times of pandemic is the need for adequate dispute resolution mechanisms. Now, observed is also that trade agreements and trade policies have become important tools to promote decent work and sustainable business. And as called for, also in the ILO declaration, Centenary Declaration, and the Global Call to Action for Human-Centered Recovery. So this is something we are going to see, and you can also, be alert to and see what how you can promote this through trade policies and trade agreements. I just wanted to touch upon briefly also development of skills and adapt to the digital economy and pathways for a just green transition, because this is something we've seen is going to be extremely important going forward, also as you heard in the introduction to this session. Now, the importance of employability skills such as communication, digital skills, problem solving, or what we call, the ability to learn or learnability, have been very high on the agenda and will continue to be so. And in fact, they are as important as technical skills. So multi-skilling of workers with a skill set that is relevant to multiple occupations within the same occupation cluster, as opposed to a single occupation, could provide the workers with flexibility that they need in the future of work. Now, we work, of course, closely with Sri Lanka and our constituents in Sri Lanka, and we have seen, that industry engagement in sector skill councils in Sri Lanka is really remarkably high, and the high responsiveness of vocational training sector for demand arising from such skills councils is a significant advantage. Now, widening this good practice to maybe other economic sectors that are with high potential of productive future employment would be advantageous to what I can see. Now, ILO recognizes the importance of establishing a sustainable and resilient business culture in Sri Lanka, especially through developing entrepreneurship among youth and women, empowering them to drive the country's socioeconomic progression. Inclusivity in all dimensions is required here, thus skilling and engaging the vulnerable communities, such as people with disabilities or migrants and children, is of focus among ILO's actions in the country, and where we really want to support and work hand in hand with you. And I must say, I'm speaking here to an audience I know is aware that, you know, a crisis also in a way creates many opportunities and space for innovation. So being the corporate leaders, the UN Global Compact membership is well acquainted with the ways and means to diagnose such issues and explore new avenues for sustainable growth in business. And it is our invitation to you today to bring that expertise to the Global Compact network to find solutions for today's goals and global, I would say global and local issues together with the development partners. Because the future of work in all dimensions will be dependent on how much the corporate world becomes responsive and also responsible. So I'm thinking that this is really where we can work together. And I'm happy to hear, you know, from everyone and respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dagmar. Thanks for that lovely update. I'll now invite Ms. Dilrukshi Kudakuru-Surya. She is the Chief Human Resources Officer at Diesel and Motor Engineering PLC. I think Dilrukshi can especially talk on the great examples of some of the stuff that we have. Dilrukshi, you need to unmute. Thank you. Over to you, Dilrukshi.
Thank you, Supul. So I'm to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very often when we talk about DEI, many would think this is about feminism, or sometimes it is about activism. But it is not new to businesses, because progressive businesses understand that different minds collaborate to solve a problem or achieve a common goal. Everyone wins. So all over the world, the researchers have established that more diverse management teams outperform peer organizations that does not have a diverse management teams. And such management teams increase average at least 19% top line or the revenue growth. So at Demos, we believe that diverse workforce can impact top line and bottom line. And we are very, very serious about it is not a HR agenda, because very often when this is discussed by women, the world thinks it is about women or it is a social problem, but it is not a social problem. It is an economic problem, and also it is a business problem. So we are very serious. We have understood this very, very seriously, and as a business issue, and we try to have a diverse workforce in the organization where it will contribute to the top line and the bottom line. Very often when we talk about diversity, we think that it is about a quota, or sometimes it is about increasing the percentage of women in the workforce. But it is very different to that. Like, you know, especially when you look at the management, the diverse management can increase bottom line through innovative solutions. So it is very important that you have many diversity at the top. So in order to have diversity at the top, you need to have a proper pipeline. So it is very important that you take a significant amount of diverse talent. Of course, when I talk about diversity, it is not only gender, but also marginal communities. We talk about that as well, but at the moment, we are mostly focused on the gender aspect here. So at Demos, like, you know, we have taken certain initiatives, and I believe that if you are serious about diversity and inclusion to attract best diverse talent, you need to be serious about it, genuine about it, and you need to have the proper infrastructure in place. I think for any organization, the basic infrastructure is the policy and the practices in the organization. So at Demos, what we do is like, we have a proper infrastructure where all our HR policies address equity and equality in the workplace. So because at these times, today's workforce is very much concerned about diversity and their progress in their careers. So we do have, it is very important. It is not only at our organization, but we need to have proper infrastructure where all HR policies address and tune to this the diversity aspect. And also you need to have programs where you can develop the female talent to get into the management positions. And also it creates other social and workplace problems such as discrimination, workplace discrimination, sexual harassment, and such problems. So it is also important that you have policies to address these aspects, as well as you have proper practices and awareness, because this may be new for many people, because we live in a society which is which acts and perceive genders differently. So if I may say, like, we have three main initiatives we are working on. One is to take more diverse talent into the talent pipeline, then also develop more diverse management team. So we extend support to talented women in terms of mentorship or education, as well as training to get into the middle management and then the senior management. One of the main aspects that we are working on is encouraging participation in women participation in non-conventional employment. So where we have a training institute where we extend vocational training to underprivileged youth. So we have programs where we recruit female talent to train them in automobile mechanics, where they get empowered and they get skills in order to participate in the economy, and also in their family economy, the organization, and largely the economy of the country. So this is one of our main initiatives. We also encourage more females to join engineering workforce, where and agriculture workforce. Not just, I know it is at grassroots level, there is more females engaged in agriculture, but where there is decision making, it is very less. But as an organization, we get competent talent, female talent, in order to make decisions in this this space. So if I may just address or mention post-COVID situation, I know before that many organizations had buy-in, and there was a perspective that the organization thought that we should get into this space and have diversity inclusion programs in organization. But with pandemic, it is unfortunate that this has taken there's a setback in this area. And we see that more than any other day, that females struggle. One thing that they have lost jobs, and with the organization taking a step back to diversity and inclusion. So we see there's a lot of social issues as well today. So it is time that we gear up again as organizations in order to work on this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dilrukshi. So I'll now invite Mr. Mangala Yapa. He's the Director General and CEO of the Employees Federation. I think he comes with a wealth of experience, both in the private sector at dockyards as well as the BOI. I'll invite Mangala to share his thoughts on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Supun, and good day to everyone. Thank you for inviting for this important session. I think this is very timely discussion that we are having. When I look at the future of work and skills and the challenges, I think we are at the verge of facing humongous challenges in this area. But as in many situations, the challenges also creates lots of opportunities. My first thought is that the total, the entire gamut of concepts that we are currently using, like work, workforce, workplace, the way people work, all that is changing. I do not necessarily agree with the idea that this has been brought about by a new normal brought about by the pandemic. I think this was anyway coming. The pandemic has only accelerated the process. So we've been going through many new normals at different stages. When the Industrial Revolution came, we had a new normal that created. Now today with 4IR and other revolutions that are taking place, certainly there will be new normal. So work, people will want deeper meaning for work, not just fulfilling their individual economic needs. No longer people will be wanting only a salary. They want to know why they are coming to work, what they are doing, and what are they getting out of it, not only in personal terms, but as a society. The workforce will be the topmost priority in the future organization. If the focus had been on capital or technology or infrastructure, in physical infrastructure, but today, going forward, it will be the workforce focused enterprises that will succeed in my view. Workplace, the present definition is already defunct. A new definition will have to evolve. So you don't know. Workplace means it could be within Sri Lanka, it could be outside Sri Lanka, it could be anywhere. It could be in different places across the world. The way people work also will differ, different to what is being practiced today. Developing, deploying, managing novel technology will be the key, not just physically doing something. Collective wisdom, collaboration, and co-creation will become the norm, so that you can't have individual experts who have very narrow fields of specialty coming and doing a particular job. You need teams to generate the outcome of the organization. The current input-based model of working and managing work will definitely transform to an outcome-based model. That's the way I see it. Diversity and inclusion, they have a lot of discussion on it. I think it will be an important aspect in the work environment, in the new normal. Particularly, Dilrukshi mentioned about marginalized communities, disability, LGBTQ. Not only that, but also the lower rankers in current workplace. Particularly if you take the manufacturing and other workplaces, you have hierarchy, you have pyramid. But that will break. People will have a different approach to this. Paternity leave, Sri Lanka is good in providing maternity leave and other social benefits, but paternity leave will come into being. Now that is in terms of work, but I think the bigger challenge will come from the skills approach. I personally don't think skills alone will help. But first position that I'm taking is skills and not qualifications or certificates or education be the determining criteria for work. Today, when we recruit people, we put certain educational qualifications. That is our base. But going forward, it will be what you can do. Skills will have to address not only knowledge, I think Supun touched upon it, but a lot of competences. What today many tend to call what is called know-how. Now that also leads to education system, probably with Professor Ajit may speak later in the day. Today people are talking about T-shaped education approach. People will question why the organization should exist. What is its socio-economic purpose before joining a company? So importance of both corporate and individual values and ethics becomes crucial for sustainability in my view. I think Supun touched upon a very important point, self-leadership. Now that has to be one key factor. How do you fit into, how do you develop your own self to fit into the organization and be part of that organization? At some stage of education is not going to be the end of learning. You will be learning, you will be studying, working, learning, and this will be a continuous cycle where everyone will be engaged. I think that's the initial opening remarks that I would like to make, and I'm happy to involve and answer any questions that comes later on today. Thank you, Supun.
Thank you, Mangala. I think certainly concur with you that it has really accelerated the need to adapt and change faster. And I think what was changing at will take 10 years now is happening in few months, and then that really puts everyone under pressure to adapt and change faster and acquire these new skills. So with that, I think we'll invite Professor Ajit Dialvis, Dean, Faculty of Graduate Studies at University of Moratuwa. Thank you, Professor, for being with us. I'd like to open the floor to you to share your views.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Supun. Yes, we are talking about the future, and but we are in the present. And what's very, very important that all of us, the business leaders, those who teach, we all realize that what we do today or what we don't do today really gives us our future. So if you miss out on the importance of the knowledge that's the emerging future, it's going to look like, and how we should play, what the role that we should play and how we get there, we are going to miss this big time. And that's where the suffering will come for our organizations as a country and to the economy. Let me position ourselves why we need this. We are in a really an interesting time, one way or the other. Just to highlight, we are currently going through 4 industrial revolutions, right? I think nowhere in the human space up to now, we have been in a position of having to be in 4 industrial revolutions at the same time. If I take biotechnology, nanotechnology, information technology, and neurotechnology. Also unique is we are in the middle of a pandemic. We are facing a pandemic and we are in it. On the long-term basis, we also have a very serious issue of the climate change. IPCC's report is given code red for humanity. So it's very clear and it's in front of us in order to make the decisions. So you can see what we should do to realize the future that we want. And we speak of resilience being built in. And here you can think, now with all this knowledge and the workplace, let me try to see where we should be positioning our workplace. We can go back and see historically, I have kind of like 4 setups. I can imagine my workplace. Am I rule-based? Am I resource-based? Am I knowledge-based? Or am I innovation-based? And I really love to see the innovation-based coming into our Sri Lankan system. And this is where I would look at what Mangala mentioned as a T-shaped learning. I have put a little bit of a twist on it, putting a pie-like shape, in the sense of you have your horizontal bar and then 2 verticals. The reason being innovation takes place in interfaces. I mean, the ability for us to interact with others. So you need to have not just one in-depth understanding, but perhaps in another area as well. And that is really what is required today. We may be speaking of subject-wise in the early days. Today, we speak of artificial intelligence. We speak of Internet of Things or Internet of Systems, right? So here, it's not just one subject. We are looking at all multiples in play, and that understanding has to come through. And probably that's what we look like, okay, how we inculcate the skill set in our workforce. So as teachers, we must also understand this, and we keep on now telling, look, what I'm teaching you today in the curricula it's going to be redundant. So I'm not going to just say that it's importance of knowing facts, but importance of taking in some the skill sets into your internals, basically to inside, and transforming yourself. That's important. It's so unfortunate that today, I just use an example that we have, we say the word in Sinhala Rasayana, but even if you take the subject knowledge, we have organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry, and physical chemistry. Now, Sri Lanka at this stage, we lack this knowledge as well. So here we really have to be serious. And this is why I would say, in this future that we're talking about, in all our organizations, that STEM skills are necessary. Yes, we speak on STEAM, that is arts and humanities coming in. I agree on that for the persons and the character of a person, but we seriously lack this STEM skill component. And this is important at the highest level of the organizations as well, if we are to build resilience. Because the future, these revolutions that I'm talking about, in addressing climate change and addressing the pandemic, this is important. The STEM concepts are important. And if we miss out, we don't take the right decision. So this is what I would stress. And again, going back, it's a very interesting point. I would say that let's say we have to understand every time that we have whatever knowledge that we have had from the past is not going to enable us to move into the future. This changing ourselves every second in a way that we love that what we are doing and we love learning is becoming very important. So there was this the poet Rumi, who is the Persian poet, and it's indicated that he is a best-selling poet in United States today. And he said a very interesting comment. Yesterday, I was clever and I want to change the world. Today, I am wise and I want to change myself. So in heading to this future, we need to do a lot of reskilling. We need to understand lots more facts, why we need to change, and to get the benefits, we need to work on it. So let us think that in our organizations, we build these attributes. We can be more specific, right? Because when we speak of industry, the word is industry in the questions, but in Sri Lanka, we do not have a decent manufacturing industry sector. And this has been shown through COVID, why we are suffering. You go into the simple food system, we suffer because we do not have a food industry. We have a culture and in agree, and that's not helping us. So it's important we understand ourselves in feeding the billions to come. And billions are going to be adding in the next 10, 20 years. And in the next 10 years, we also have to address this temperature rise. So how are we to do this, right? So this continuous learning is becoming important. And as I said, I love to have the innovation spirit in an organization and to bring that concept in when we look at myself as a leader, maybe the organization top, my fellow peers, and all my human capital, the members that who contribute. And we need to think like that in changing. So with that, I would say, let's be wise. Let's change ourselves, but let's understand what the future needs, but we'll act today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, for that great thoughts. If I can, we invite all the panelists to switch on the cameras. And then there are a few questions that have come from the participants. Maybe if I post the first question to Ms. Dagmar Walter on this entire question about brain drain. Especially during this period, we are seeing increasing amount of brain drain. And skilled employees moving away from Sri Lanka, getting good education in the country, and then due to uncertainty, they move away from the country. Is there a solution to that issue, or have you seen countries addressing this better, and your experience and thoughts? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. In fact, what can be done is actually to create employment opportunities locally. I mean, in this case, nationally, because we're talking about an international labor market. And I think it just emphasizes how important it is to be, aware of the global labor market, as I say, and what is available there, and how we actually anchor also at the national level and create possibilities at national level. And I think everything we're speaking about here on this panel, I've listened very carefully, is extremely important to this. So, I mean, there is no, one quick solution to it, but as, capital is mobile, as finance is mobile, businesses are mobile, well, the workforce is also mobile. And so I think really it is to work with a, with a national workforce in its diverse form to actually create opportunities at home, but also to basically, one can equally attract, right? So it's not only going out, but it can also come in. So it's important to attract the workforce, even, from outside, that we need in a national labor market and for national business. But I think it exemplifies really, the kind of, international and global aspect of economy that we are in. Thank you.
Thank you, Dagmar. Maybe Professor Mangala, you want to add on to that based on your experiences?
Yes, Supun, Mangala would like to add, yes, as Dagmar said, it is a very complex problem, and certainly it is very apparent in Sri Lanka today. I think, as she said, everything is, globalized today. So therefore, the people or the human resources also can move. That mobility has come in. So we need to not only look at brain drain, but how do we gain brain? How do we do the reverse infusion, and particularly for the new industries that is coming, but even at a lower level, skills levels, people who have gone and worked abroad can come and how they can contribute. But I think the fundamental issue is how do Sri Lanka reform itself to accommodate all these changes, because we are still stuck with the, like Ajit said, culture, policy, legal frameworks, everything that does not necessarily support what is happening. So I think for the industry, every association, every body, even associations like institutions like us, is to look at that reform agenda. How do we create that enabling environment so that opportunities will be created, so that people, I mean, there's no reason why people don't want to live in Sri Lanka. It's a nice place to live. If you go and talk to anyone, they will say this is a very beautiful and nice place to live. Why they move is, A, because they don't see the opportunity and they don't have the confidence that I will be comfortable living here. So we need to change that aspect. So it is a transformation that we have to create, and it's a reform, and that reform has to take place faster than we think if we have to capitalize on this opportunity.
Thank you, Mangala. Professor, you want to add on, or we can move to the next? Go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, just a quick, yes, I think the brain drain, it's so unfortunate. We must address this because country's greatest assets is its human capital. And if we stand to lose that, we are going to be threatened. But then remember that it's up to us to change. That's why I said the leadership needs that STEM understanding. We have in our manufacturing sector, there is a sector there. We have still, by the act, forbids the use of electricity in the industry. Just imagine 21st century Sri Lanka. We have a sector, the act says that you can't use electricity, but more to be said in there, right? So it's up to us. And it goes back to my innovation thinking of we need creative destruction in getting archaic laws out. It's like we at University of Mauritius sometimes teach e-governance, but we cannot accept the e-signature.
Yes,
So
I think
we can,
good points. Yes, I can also relate personally. When I graduated in year 2000, most of my colleagues were moving out of the country because we were at the height of the war. But I decided to stay back, and I think it's having that confidence in the country and having the confidence and working to overcome those challenges. So, but we have a lot to do in this new normal, new environment where the skills are very, very mobile. We have to really do those reforms so that we can retain as well as gain skills. If I move on to Dilrukshi on specific points related to DIMO itself, what are the gender-related critical HR issues that you have come across at DIMO, and if you can mention a few examples and then how you overcame some of these major issues.
So, like, in any organization, when you start such initiatives, everyone is suspicious and you're not used to it. I remember in 2012, first when I took my initiative to engage females in unconventional areas of employment, we tried to recruit students to develop in automobile technology. We have been anyway, we have been attracting many good female engineers, of course, from Moratu University and from world over. But we also we saw this skill scarcity in the market. So we understood that we cannot ignore the 50% of the population and continue this journey. So when I first started recruiting female students for these courses, there was a lot of resistance. Actually, at the beginning, nobody came. And with much difficulty, we recruit 20 candidates. And once they completed their studies, we had to give them internships in our different workshops and in different areas of businesses. So then the problem was the others were not very, they were not used to having these females in the in workshops and in their space. So at that moment, it was very difficult. So one thing that I understood was, if you do this, you need to have proper infrastructure in terms of not only policies. I spoke about policies earlier, but physical infrastructure so that they are comfortable, and also train the men if there are females so they need to be comfortable to have them. Initially, I saw them trying to record how they work. Then they just stare at them, so these are normal issues. So it's not easy to implement this kind of thing. So at very beginning, these are the things that I learned. So in order to get more female talent into the pipeline, you need others engaged and others educated. So that is at the lower end. But the problem is, I think diversity is very much needed at the top in order to in order to get them there. It is very difficult to attract talented female colleagues, female candidates into the organization. So this is why we do a lot of things in order to make it a conducive place for female talent. Not only that, we are also collaborating with the Employees Federation, with Mangalas Institute. We also try to attract marginal communities, such as differently, there's diverse talented groups. So we also have done little work in that space. And that is also like, where that is, that area is concerned, we have done audits, how conducive the organization is, how attractive the organization is to such communities. So these are some of the things that I've learned. It's a good thing that you want to do certain work in that space, but before that, you need to put your infrastructure in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Adilukshi. I mean, yesterday, I think Ms. Kani Vignaraja was saying from UNDP that as you, at the base of the organization, you have diversity, but as you progress and then at the higher leadership, it becomes lesser and lesser. And it's just like as you go into a higher altitude, it's harder to breathe and less oxygen. The more higher you go in the organization, again, the diversity becomes challenged and something that we need to work together to address it. And another aspect is to make sure that in those decisions, we have always ask for diversity options so that our decision is not biased to one side. If I move on to the next question that is coming from the audience, if I put it to Ms. Walter on, is there a difference between gender equality and women empowerment? Do you see gender equality and women empowerment as two different things, or how would you go about explaining that?
Thank you. I think it's part of the same coin in a way, right? Because equality and equity is something we have to have in our policies, in our laws, and then we have to implement them. And I think excellent examples were given here. And then empowerment is also, especially for women to actually become more maybe self-confident and also dare to take up business, engage. It goes back to skilling, it goes back to opportunities. So I think it's part of, the same, it's kind of a holistic approach, if one says like this. And colleagues on the panel may wish to add how you see it.
Yeah, but in interest. Okay, go ahead, Adilukshi.
So, in my opinion, I think gender equality is treating men and women equally. So actually, when we embrace this concept, our tagline was that, equality to men and women in the workforce. So they're like, people feel more comfortable, like, every gender, right? So it is not now when you talk about gender, there are other marginal communities as well. So we call them equality to all, but women empowerment is specific to women, where that empowerment comes with independence, economical independence, socially, and also and non-dependent. So the empowerment comes there where they're educated, where they're skilled, when they participate in the economy. So empowerment is about self-confidence and being non-dependent.
Thank you. Thank you,
my contribution.
Thank you. So one last question to you. Yeah, Mangala, on how to optimize skills, passports, and logbooks to identify skills and competencies of Sri Lanka.
I already responded to that typing, but I think that is an important aspect because, like I said, it is not only skills that matters, but all competences. So there is a skills passport project that has been initiated. We had a recent review and it is augmented now to encompass all these things, and a new initiative is taken. So soon we will have that ready. It will be launched for everyone will like this thing. So my one of the position or other comments or observation that I made is It is not just physical ill, but it also needs to have other aspects covering as well, because you are not now only hiring just a skilled person. You don't need a person with a particular technical skill to hire, but you need a whole person to hire. So that aspect needs to be covered in this thing, and that is the pressure, that is the transformation that needs to take place in developing yourself. How do you encompass all that thing? That was the change that will be brought about. Adding to what Dilrukshi said, just to cap, I think there is a social aspect, social issue also now at DocCat. We try to recruit a lot of female employees, engineers, because I used to work when I was in Soviet Union with a lot of female fitters, welders, crane operators, you name it, designers, etc. But you come to Sri Lanka, you can't do that. So I encourage, but there were inside organizational issues as well as social issues. I remember one girl who was very, very strong and who wanted to continue, got married and finally said, now that I am married, my pressure not from my family, but my husband family is that I have to leave DocCat. Now that's a cultural transformation that has to take. It can't be done only one-sided. It is a whole society has. Okay, we may be better than some societies, but that is not our benchmark. We need to move beyond that. We need to create everyone. So I think from universities everywhere, even our educational system is boys' schools, girls' schools separate. All that needs to take a big shift. Whole gamut of reforms, as I call it, are required to get there.
Thank you, Mangala. Yeah, very interesting examples and very relevant in today's context. We have just 2 minutes. Maybe if I ask each of you to share your parting thoughts, 30 seconds for each of you, then we can conclude at 12:30. Maybe if I can start with Dagmar.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this panel has been extremely interesting, and as ILO, we are here to support business and partners in Sri Lanka from our Colombo office, from the Delhi office, and really we have to be confident in the future. There is a lot of opportunity, of course, challenges, but we are the leaders and we have to work together to overcome them. And that goes for all gender, all, women and men, etc. So it has to be inclusive, and the future is in our hands, and it has to be human-centered recovery. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well said. Maybe Dilrukshi, to you.
Yes, I think from whatever we heard, we can see that global labor market will go through a huge transformation. And I think we are today working, talking under the umbrella of making global goals local business. So our contribution is very important in order to achieve sustainability goals. And whatever terms, I think with this AI, machine learning coming into play, and platform economy in place, I think we need to take top-down learning approach, and any way that we could, the organizations should be in line with this, the SDGs, and contribute in order to have a sustainable world for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dilrukshi. Maybe Professor Ajit.
Yes, I think our leadership need to understand this very quickly, because I feel now, I'll take from an example, look at artificial intelligence, which is supposed to be eating into everything, even maybe eating into the software coders, right? Now, when I hear the scenario of, okay, we need 20,000, we need 50,000 software professionals. Just remember today now, with technologies like GPT from Elon Musk, OpenAI, the traditional coding, these cargo loads of coders are not necessary. We may be able to put in, and deep learning will give us our thesis. I put my experiment, I put my data in, my thesis will come out. So I have a feeling that we are not making ourselves also aware of this future that is shaping up. So if we miss this understanding, we may be taking very big, seriously wrong missteps as a leadership tool. So I want to warn in that direction. is not just merely this list of words that we need. We need to understand the future is being shaped in a very, very different way. And of course, understanding the responsibility of the climate. So
Thank
that's
you,
what I want
Professor.
to say.
It's really powerful. I think future is not going to be linear. It's completely unimaginable,
True.
and we have to be ready for
Absolutely.
that. Thank you. Over to you, Mangala.
Yeah, I think with all this, all what I have to say, I mean, this is what I have learned working with Japanese for a long time. They say Sri Lankans are absolutely very good, exceptional people in terms of understanding, thinking, you know your problems, you debate, discuss, you come up with this thing, solutions, planning, all that. But is it, they say Japanese are not so good. I'm not trying to be, ridicule nation or whatever it is, but they say they're not very good at that. That is why they adopted Kaizen. So we have to do only small things at a time. But they say, you are always thinking big, you're very good. But where you fail is you don't take action. So I think I leave it that. We have good deliberations, but let's move to do something out of it, because knowledge without action, I think, has no purpose. It is just out there, you see, it's out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mangala. It's very powerful again. I'll thank you very much for all the panelists. I'll hand over the mic to Janani. Over to you, Janani.
Thank you to our wonderful and eminent panel for that wonderful discussion. I was truly engrossed, and we had some very good questions as well. I'd like to express our special thanks to Mr. Supun Veerasinghe, Group Chief Executive and member of the Board of Dialogue Axiata, as well as you, board member of UN Global Compact Network, for taking us through a very valuable and informative session. Thank you very much, Supun. And we welcome all our attendees to join us at our next session at 2 p.m., where we look at the importance of MSMEs to the economy of Sri Lanka and how they contribute to the SDGs. Thank you once again, everyone. It's goodbye for now.